Hey guys, thanks for sending these swings in. Gonna run through a couple of ideas for you. Overall, having played with you but not seen this kind of in slow motion, it's actually not bad. There's a lot of good stuff you're up to. We're gonna focus a little bit on your setup and what I would say overall. If you just kind of look at the way your legs are working, they're very wide, but they're very quiet, like too quiet. And if you watch over here on the left, we're going to get into this in more detail, but this transitional motion is very upper body oriented. I would call this, it kind of looks like you're just kind of spinning out. If you watch your left shoulder, it really quickly works up and to the left. It's definitely not responding to your lower body motion. So the sequencing is kind of the big thing that I think separates players at your level from a little better players. Now the good news is, despite that, if you watch over here on the right, despite kind of a lot of people who have that look where their upper body's spinning out, well, this club head doesn't work like yours. So you're fortunate that you're still shallowing this club out. So if you watch the club head, it's going to kick behind you, which is called flattening the shaft, and it's actually going to work in somewhere inside of your hands. So a lot of people would just be, swinging over the top, cutting across it this way, but you don't. So you're able to hit some nice shots. I just think we can make it a lot better. So let's dig in a little bit here. On the left, first of all, with your setup, this looks like maybe a 6-iron. These legs are just a little too wide for me, so I definitely narrow things up a couple inches. Ball position's fine, but just a little wide. I think part of that might be part of the reason why your lower body is just kind of limited here. Gets to a point it can just be too wide. And on the right, a couple things. Two main things. One, your hips are really flat, like horizontal, and you'll see as you turn back, they're going to stay, because they're pretty still. So they're staying pretty flat to the ground while your shoulders are steepening. So those, in most decent swings, are going to be a little closer together, your shoulders and your hips. So what you need to do, and what I would suggest you do, is get these hips, get your pelvis more tilted at address. You might feel like you stick the top of your butt more up in the air. Some people like to feel like their belt buckle points more down towards the ball instead of straight out. But that's going to allow your hips to rotate on more of an angle, a tilt, as opposed to this kind of horizontal look. And along with that, I'd say you're probably tilted over a little much. The easiest thing that's going to help once you get your hips tilted is you're going to take this golf club and point it at least to your belt buckle. At your height, it could even be between your belt buckle and your belly button. But that's going to help you. Your chest is going to feel a little higher up in the air, but you're going to feel more tilted with your lower body, or in the hip area. So that's going to be really important, before you even swing the club. Now, as you get moving here, on the right, you'll see kind of a classic takeaway of the club just getting a little inside of your hands. The face is a little open for my liking. It's getting kind of picky. What really normally happens is you just kind of roll the club with your arms instead of turning it back with your chest and your hips. So we want you to be pivoting the club back more with your body's rotation, not kind of wheeling it around with your arms. Because, kind of a sign of this, we want more mobility. We want your body working more aggressively through your swing so you can unlock kind of some range of motion and potential to hit it farther. And when you get this left arm back parallel to the ground, I would like to see your chest, if you're looking in the mirror at least, I'd want your chest to be 90 degrees turned, or as close to that as you can get. And if you look at your collarbone here, you're probably half that. And you're a really fit guy, so that's pretty good considering you haven't moved your hips at all. If I stand here right now and and you can try this, if you lock your hips in place and try to turn as much as you can, I can only get like 40, low, maybe 40 degrees with my upper body. So in order to make that possible, you're going to have to allow your hips to rotate on the way back. Okay, so that belt buckle is going to feel like it comes around and points towards the camera. Just a bit more. It's going to feel a lot more. It's not going to point towards the camera. Technically, it'll rotate in the 40-degree range would be fine. Alright, so that's kind of item number 2, is getting this more of a one-piece looking takeaway to get your upper body and your hips more engaged to get the club in the air. And the second piece of that, because you're not down here a lot, so I don't have a chance to be kind of hands-on with this, but you might as well know. If we're watching your right arm, I don't really care for this look on the right, and if you look on the left, because your pivot isn't really rotating a lot, it's not really engaged, this right arm kind of just collapses. It goes into what's called internal rotation, and this has kind of a narrow look to it here. It's something you could look into, and if you want to mess around with the feeling, I know it's a lot, but you can think about this stuff as you're working on it. As you're getting up here to the top of your swing, your upper right arm, so your right bicep, and I'll show you some pics in a second, but your right arm, what it could feel like is if you're arm wrestling, okay, and we're arm wrestling each other, and you're going to dominate me, obviously. But if I'm losing, so my right arm is bending back to my right clockwise, that's the feeling of external rotation of my right arm. And that's what you're going to feel as you're getting up towards the transition area. Okay, Adam Scott, Thomas Peters, Tiger Woods, guys who have Dustin Johnson, really great examples. And while I'm yapping about that, let me see if I can find one of those. So if you watch the way the right arm functions, what you're going to see is a little more of a vertical right forearm, and you're going to see less of your right bicep. Okay. So from the other side, that was Peters, here's Adam Scott. You can just imagine how much more kind of space, you could call it width, arc, I don't know, there's so many golfing terms. But that's just more cranked up to me. It's not getting narrow. Like this. Okay, so if you can just imagine the position your right arm is in versus this one, much, much different. And we might as well keep him here in transition for you. So I'm going to draw both of your hips and a little line. Actually, I'm not even going to do that. We're just going to look at hips. Adam Scott, a great example of getting pressure into his left leg early in the downswing. And believe it or not, there's a moment right here. His upper body is still turning back, and his lower body is starting forward. So if you watch the club, it's still completing his backswing as he's pushing and rotating off the ground going forward. There's a lot of different styles of lower body action on the way through. I could spend hours doing videos on all the different ways to do it. But the biggest takeaway from all really high quality players is that their lower body initiates the downswing. If you want to do any research on that, people have labeled it the kinematic sequence. There's like tons of data. It's pretty obvious if you just look at a video camera, or if you look at a video and look how this lower body is initiating the forward motion. Now if we watch your golf swing, what I believe is going on, because you're not really wound up, and I don't know, maybe you've never really worked on this stuff, if you watch your left shoulder, I think it's kind of spinning out. So that club's kind of moving first. So your lower body is just kind of stagnant and you're yanking that club down towards the ball. So instead of your arms yanking the club down, we're going to let your arms feel a lot more passive. And we're going to force your lower body to initiate the motion. And if you just want a simple goal, you know, ideally you're going to have a little more turn at this point. Your hips are going to be a little more rotated on the way back. But a simple idea, if there's a wall here, left of your front foot, the first thing to touch that wall should be your belt buckle. And I say the first thing because I don't want you to take your hips and just bump them into the wall and not rotate. So I want you to be able to get that pressure forward and rotate. If we watch Scott, I like that. That look of getting his belt buckle to a wall in front of his left hip. He has a little more lateral motion than some guys, but a tremendous ability to rotate as he's sliding. Again, we don't have to get too specific with that. These are all new ideas. And in general, coming back to you, what we would like is get your setup a little more orthodox to make this stuff possible. Tilting your hips, hands higher, that's going to help you to stand up a little straighter and better posture. There's, you know, a great example, even though he's taller than you, tilted hips. And if you watch the shoulders, how they work, obviously, because everything's connected through your spine, those are going to be parallel to one another. You can also see his hips rotating. I'd love to see a little bit of space in here between your knees, especially on your practice swings. That would be a good sign that your hips are rotating. And our goal is to just kind of increase your range of motion. And you're going to kind of have to just see how you respond to some of it. I would fool around with the feeling of your right arm as you're turning more, as you're getting it up to the top, trying to feel like you're losing that arm wrestling match. Or some people say, like, your right bicep's a corkscrew, like it's spinning to the right or clockwise. It's very specific to try to talk about those things, but that's an athletic motion. If you were to throw a ball right now from here, this right arm would go clearly, it would clearly go into external rotation, and you would rotate your lower body as hard as you could. You'd probably even step into it to throw something, to do something athletic. And you know, the more you watch this in slow motion, you realize that's not happening. So all that stuff, I think, should allow you to drag this club into impact a little more effectively, a little more consistently, and with a little more speed. And we'll see how you respond. So hopefully some of that resonates. If you have either of you have any questions, shoot me an email, give me a call, and we'll see what we can do. Okay, so let's start with that. Hope that helps. Hope it gives you some new ways to think about it, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.